Welcome to She Is His, a podcast from the Pretty and Wise Collective. Here, we are all about digging into God's Word and sharing real and honest, sometimes ridiculous, stories of faith and growing together in wisdom, grace, and courage. Think of this as your invitation to go grab a cup of coffee, pull up a chair, and join in on the conversation. Together, we'll laugh, we're going to learn, and we're going to lean into God's truth so that we can boldly walk as His daughters. New episodes are going to be dropping every other Friday, so don't forget to follow us on social media, or feel free to visit www.prettyandwise.com to stay connected. All right, ladies, let's dive in, let's grow in wisdom, and let's celebrate the beauty of sisterhood in Christ.
Hey, and welcome back to the She Is His podcast. I am your host, Lyndsay Terry, and I am here with our good friend Lori Gregory today.
Hiya.
And we are talking about friendship. So we're in this Changing Seasons series right now. We've talked about, what have we talked about? We've talked about marriage, we've talked about parenting, and now we're talking about how friendship changes throughout your life, particularly your adult life as a woman. So I love this conversation and I wanted to have it with my good friend Lori. So
Excited.
it'll be a good one. So I feel like, tell me if you can relate to this, Lori, that friendships change more in adulthood than you really anticipate when you're younger. So, like, because when you're a kid, you feel like your best friend is going to be your best friend forever and ever. Amen. And
Yeah.
that changes a lot. Or even like your early adult friendships, they change and it just more than you would anticipate. Do you find that to be true in your life too?
I do. I sometimes even think now about the friends that I had in my hometown. And
Hmm.
when I think about them, I think, gosh, I don't think I ever envisioned that I wouldn't have seen them for 20 years, or that I think it instantly brings me back to where I was at that time. And, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think of friends I had like in college that really close to and feel like they were good friendships, but we just aren't that connected anymore. So
Yeah.
things really change or friends that I even had, 10 years ago, but because my life has changed a lot in the past 10 years, it's not like we don't want to be friends. It's just there's just been a natural drift. So, let me ask you this. Think about when you were in your 20s versus today. What kind of friend were you in your 20s versus now? Like, how has you being a friend changed?
Well, I think I was thinking about this today. I think I've always been a loyal friend, kind of a one friend type of person. Not that I didn't have groups of friends, I did, but I was more comfortable one on one with people. But I think I was kind of more go along to get along. I just
Yeah.
kind of up for anything. And not that I'm not per se that way now, but I think I'm a little bit more like I want to be known versus liked. I think back when I was, in high school, I was like, I kind of learned, what I could say, what I couldn't say, to be accepted, unfortunately, not that I'm proud of that, but that's kind of who I was at that time.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, gosh, when I was in my 20s, I think my friendships were for me as a friend, I was more driven by like who was fun to be around, like who did I have a really good time with. And that was not always, but probably my primary focus in most of my friendships was just having a good time together and
Hmm.
laughing a lot. And I liked friends that, like to go on wild adventures with me and just kind of by that I just mean I was very spontaneous more than I am now back then. And so I wanted to have a friend that I could
Yeah.
just call up and be like, "Hey, no, it's 9 o'clock at night, but I was thinking about going to do this. You want to go with me?" Or, "Hey, I want to
Right.
drive up into the mountains and find this little ghost town today. You want to go with me?" Like last minute little
Sign me up.
yes, that was who I was in my 20s 100%. And I think now, here almost a couple decades later, I think my primary focus, well, I still am that way. I still like that. Although I don't do as much of that now because I just have a lot more responsibilities in my life. I can't
Mhm.
just, disappear for a whole day. But I think the thing that I look for in developing friendships and who I am as a friend now is much more like I want to add something to your life, and I want there to be like a mutual growth that happens because of each other, because of the relationship. Like that's more I think that's taken precedence for me over like, are you up for a good time?
Right.
Which I still am up
Yeah.
for a good time, but
You can have both, right?
you
Like, you
can
can
have
have both.
both. You can have both. What season of friendship do you feel like you're in now? Because your life now is so much different than, 20 years ago. And you've got two kids now. And as a mom of younger kids, I feel like that changes things a lot in friendships. Where do you
Yeah.
feel like you're at now in friendships?
I think, I'm much choosier with friendships in the sense that my time is more limited, like you say, having a family of little kids especially, they take up a lot of your time. And, you're in, you have church responsibilities and, your husband and everything, so your time gets real limited. So I feel like, you have to be more intentional about reserving that time with friends, and so it's not like it was in the '20s where it was just like, "Okay, well, every Friday night, what are we doing?" Like, or
Right.
every whatever night. So I and kinda like you were saying, at some point in my life, I kinda thought, "I want this type of friend, and I'm not finding this type of friend." Like a more authentic friendship, a more somebody who builds you up, that kind of friendship. And so when I'm looking for friends, I'm looking for that. I'm looking for, like you said, people that you can grow with and that
Yeah.
are not, that are wanting you to grow. They're not offended by your growth, but, wanting you to grow. And so that has become a big shift for me.
I really like that thought of not being offended by your growth and wanting that for you and in friends that you look for. Do you feel like that's harder to come by or do you feel like that's pretty easy?
Fortunately, sometimes it can, I think, be harder. I
Mhm.
think we're all insecure and, myself included. I'm, extremely insecure at times. And so sometimes if you're not in the right place, I think sometimes you can feel, I don't know, threatened, I guess I don't know if that's the right word, but just,
Yeah.
maybe, or you can take things the wrong way and you can apply them the wrong way. And so, I mean, that's been a big struggle for me too. So, but I think at this point, I, I want somebody that who kind of has a mentality of like, we're in this together and
Yeah.
how can we make each other better? How can we make each other better? And it's more, I am not hurt by your growth and you're not hurt by my growth. In fact, we're benefiting from it.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. That's been a big shift for me.
I think that's good. I think um yeah, I mean, full transparency, I'm thinking of a specific friend in my life who I really look up to, especially like her relationship with the Lord and just kind of her devotion. But I find myself sometimes that I think threatened that could be maybe jealous. Maybe I feel threatened because I'm jealous sometimes. I'm jealous, and I have to fight against that because I feel like, 1, I wanna be where she's at, and so, like, the spiritual side of me is like, "Oh, what a great example," and the fleshly side of me is, like, jealous and insecure that, this is such a strength in her life, and I don't feel like I'm living up to that. And so, yeah, I think that can be a hard thing to navigate in adult friendships when you're looking for friends who aren't just fun, but are going to build you up and call you to be better than you are right now, which I think a lot of us probably are like, yeah, I want that. But then sometimes when we're presented with that, it can be uncomfortable to be called to be better than you are right now because that means I've got to change. It's that iron sharpening iron thing. But yeah, I can definitely relate with that sense of insecurity in those relationships at times where, like, yeah, like there's a jealousy or I don't know, something the enemy is just trying to like drive a wedge and keep you from what that friend can actually be in your life.
Yeah.
And I think that can be difficult to navigate at times. So
Yeah, it is.
how do you navigate that? Like, for you personally, how do you navigate that?
I mean, I think ultimately, and because I think I've struggled with this since I was a teenager, probably, you know, and I think ultimately you're in bondage if you're always in that scarcity mindset.
Yeah.
If they're not, you know, if they're doing well, you're not doing well. But when we realize that really has nothing to do with, there is not a cause and effect here. It's not like, oh, they're doing well, so you're not doing well.
Yeah.
It's not that at all. And actually, when you're thinking that way, it's just much more. You're not free. You don't have joy. You can't be yourself because you're just thinking about maintaining and being this kind of person that, is good enough. And I think that in itself at some point is just too exhausting to continue, you know?
Yeah.
You're starting to want people that, wanna see you for who you are and that want to get you to the place that you wanna get yourself, but you can't. You need people. You can't always get there yourself, you need that person that like, I need my friend who's doing better in this area in my life and that I can learn
Yeah.
from, you know?
Yeah. I I think I think that struggle can stem from this conversation is going a totally different direction than
Sorry.
I had thought, but I think it's important and good. So I wanna, flesh it out a little bit. I think sometimes that insecurity and jealousy in a friendship that is good and trying to produce something good in you, but I think you put it right, that there's a bondage there. I think it's the flip side of pride because because honestly, and I'm kind of preaching to myself thinking about this, because it's like I can't stand the idea of someone being better than me or someone, none of us want to say that, but all of us want to be the best in the room. Like nobody wants to be the worst in the room.
Yeah.
And maybe we all aren't like cut the same way in the way that exhibits itself, but I think it's pride that I would feel insecure over someone's, like you said, their greatness doesn't diminish me. It doesn't mean, because they're great in this area and maybe I'm not like the same as them, that doesn't mean I'm like less.
Right.
And so, I don't know, I think that's something like, I'm thinking in this particular friend that I have struggled with this over the years with, it has really driven me to pray a lot about, like, "Lord, what's off in me that I'm feeling," instead of encouraged and challenged in a really positive way and even inspired to live different and pursue you with a greater devotion, I'm sitting here like, well, everybody likes this person more than me and they think they're more spiritual and like I'm making it about me and I feel like a little kid on the inside. And what's broken there?
Yeah.
I need to change my perspective because right now my perspective is on how this friendship is serving me rather than what you want to produce in me through this friendship and how you want me to serve this friend. So it's taken me some really intentional prayer and time with the Lord and just like stopping and recognizing, you know, this is not healthy thinking. It's not, this is not, this isn't the kind of thought process that, flows out of a healed heart.
Right. Right.
This is from brokenness. So let me deal with the Lord what's broken because it's not this friend's issue, it's my issue.
Right.
And what I have found is as I've dealt with that with the Lord, and it's not that that never comes up anymore, but when it does, I feel like I'm more ready to handle it than just left, kind of flailing and, oh, I feel awful. I've really been able to look at this friend now as a person that God's put in my life to encourage me to greater levels of devotion and death to self, devotion to Jesus and death to self. And as I've embraced that, instead of that I feel insecure or less than. I've, let go of those things and really embraced that God's putting her here to help model for me what he wants to produce in my life. That fruit has started to produce in my life. That death to self and that devotion, that greater devotion to the Lord has started to grow just from a perspective shift. And so I think if you're struggling with that in friendship, which I think, we get this idea that that's just middle school stuff, but it follows us if we don't deal with it.
Oh, yeah, for sure,
Then you
for
just need to
sure.
talk to the Lord about what's busted and
Yeah.
not your friend's issue, really, probably. It's probably more the Lord just, is ready to do some kind of healing for you. So I've noticed that not all friends live through every season with you. I have one friend who I have been friends with since we were 11, which is hilarious to me. We're still good friends. We love her to death. And then I have other friends that I was like really close to for seasons that I don't even talk to anymore. It's not like, we had a falling out necessarily. That season passed and they were a seasonal friend. So, how do you know for you, how do you know when something is just a season versus like something that's worth fighting to keep in a friendship? 'Cause, sometimes there's this natural drifting apart and you're left wondering, do I need to keep pursuing this friendship or was it just for that time in my life? Like how do you know what to do with that?
I think, when I was thinking about this question, I was thinking I've had both over the years. And I think both are valuable in different ways. And a lot of times it does start off of the initial like connection, right? Like, you have a common interest, you have a common lifestyle, you have there's something that's connecting you.
Yeah.
And so I think sometimes it is just that season of that thing, right? Like I when I first got married, I was moving around with my husband who was in the military. And so the first way I made friends is meeting other military wives, and we had that in common. And 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 that was needed and it was like a lifeline at the time, right? Because like I was in new places, I didn't know anybody. And here we were connected initially. Not that because
Yeah.
we were the same type of people, not because we had the same personality or the same lifestyle. Is meaning like we have kids or not kids, not like that. But because we have this one thing in common. So I think like for those forever friendships, they could start that way, but they're built on something more, you know? They're not just that particular season, not for that reason, but somehow it has gone deeper than just that interest. Maybe you share common values. Maybe, I do think faith plays a big part if you're gonna be close with someone, sharing a certain life, outlook. So, I mean, for me, that it sometimes it has started most of the times it does start in a sort of seasonal way where you share that thing in common. But like for me, whether it's like forged in because we went through something together, like some kind of adversity or some kind of struggle together, or we just kind of forged a deeper relationship that was based on more than just the reason we initially connected. I think those tend to be, and then it's the intentional work you put into the relationship over the years. You can't really forget that part because I think when relationships don't put in that, you know, I mean, friendships are a lot like marriages in that sense. Like you have
Right,
to
right.
put that um, reciprocal um, effort into it. And sometimes I feel like friendships fell by the wayside because that wasn't there. And so I think for me, that's kind of, how I tell the difference between forever friends and seasonal friends. Seasonal friends might be that friend that, you both go to the gym at the same time, or you're homeschooling mothers, or it can be based on a reason. And maybe some of those friends will deepen, but maybe some of them won't.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I think sometimes, I look back on some good friendships that I had, but were definitely more like a season in my life. And that season changed. And so that friendship changed. And not that, like, if we saw each other again, we wouldn't, be clicking again. Like we got along really well. But it seemed like that friendship, the purpose of that friendship was more around what we're doing together, like maybe we're in ministry together. And so we're friends while we're in ministry together. But then if that changes, then sometimes the friendship fizzles in some ways. And it's more like that was a friendship of not that it wasn't good and wonderful, and they're good and wonderful, but it might have been more like, I don't know. Is it awful to say kind of like a utility? Like there was a
There's a functional
specific.
aspect to it.
Yeah, there's a more of a functional aspect to it because a lot of our friendship centered around the thing we were doing together. And so for me, I've seen like a lot of my season, I don't know, seasonal friendships or friendships that lasted for a season are often because the friendship develops because we're doing a thing together. But then that's kind of where most of the friendship stays. So then if we quit doing that thing together, then we've lost a lot of our connection. So yeah, I mean, but then there's the should I keep pursuing that friendship? And think I think the question you can ask yourself if you're finding that you're in a friendship that's drifting, maybe it's because you are like me and it's like, oh, we were doing this thing together and now we're not. And so the friendship is kind of, unraveling in a like organic way, not like a, negative thing necessarily. And so for me, like the question I think to ask yourself if you're kind of in a drifting friendship and you're like, is this for just a season or is this a forever thing and I just need to put more work into it? I think is what does this friend help me look more like Jesus, or is that kind of a neutral thing? Not necessarily like, I'm the devil when I'm around them, but maybe they're not like drawing me into a greater depth in my relationship with the Lord. And then that's a factor to consider because if they are, I mean, unless it's pretty clear otherwise, that's a friendship I would want to fight for. I really want people in my life that are going to help me look like Jesus and are willing to tell me the truth even when I don't want to hear it.
Yeah.
And then I think, on the flip side, is this a person that God has me discipling in a way? Like, even if it's more just through the friendship, not really sit down intentional. Now I'm going to teach you this, but really just more the example you are in the friendship. That's something to ask the Lord. Is that something you want me to move on from or still pursue? Yeah, I don't know. Those are
Yeah.
those are my only thoughts about that.
I like that because I think it goes back to the, what we were talking about earlier, that you want that person, you know, when we are looking more like Jesus, we are our best selves, and we want that person to want that for us. And so we want those friends that want that for us. Because um, if you know Jesus wants us to have freedom, to have joy, and to have truth. And
Yeah.
so I think when you know that is a really good point, is that those are the ones worth fighting for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, I don't know, all of this makes me think of, I'm gonna butcher this quote, so I'm just gonna give you the gist. But
That's good
C.S.
for me.
Lewis, he talked about friendship one time, and he talked about how, and I think this was in, oh gosh, what book was it? I think it was in A Grief Observed, maybe? I could be wrong. But he talked about friendship and how each friend brings out a side of him that only comes out around that friend. And so when that friendship is lost, whether through death or whatever, like there's a part of him that dies too.
I like
And
that.
I think that can sometimes be, I think, one of the hardest parts about losing a friend. The season for that friendship is over. Even if it's, right and good that it is, or if it's there's nothing you can do about it. Like I think about, my friend Kirsten, who passed away a few years ago. And so I find that observation by C.S. Lewis to be really true. And I think one of the harder parts about losing a friend is that there's a part of you that goes away when that friend goes away. Friendship shouldn't be, I think, entered into lightly. We really do, like you said, in a lot of ways, it's kind of like a marriage. There's a lot of similarities. We really do like bond our souls together in some ways. There are things that people bring out of me that nobody else does. It's their influence or their presence that draws something out of me. And then when that goes away, that part of me kind of goes away. And I think that can be a grief when you lose a friendship, whether it's a totally final thing because if there's a death or if it's just you guys have drifted apart and maybe it's good and right that you guys, it's okay that served its purpose in your life and you've moved on, but then there's still that grief of losing that a close friendship. And I don't know, I think sometimes it's just important to recognize that there's a reason for the grief. This this is an example that they used when I was growing up in, like, 90s youth group, and they used it for, like, don't have sex outside of marriage. They'd, like, glue 2 pieces of construction paper together and then pull it apart, and you couldn't pull it apart without ripping them, and they were,
Mm.
like, kind of permanently fused together, but I think it's also an example of friendship that when you bond yourself with someone, and then even if you're pulled apart for good reasons, a part of you breaks off. There's still a struggle to work through. There's still something to mend in your heart that isn't there anymore. And so I don't know. I just want to say that if you're losing a friendship or you're moving on from a friendship, I see you. I hear you. I get that. I understand the struggle and the heartache and the grief that can come with that. And I think maintaining adult friendships is like really hard. It
Yeah.
requires, calendar negotiations like international diplomacy. It's just, when can we get together? It's like you and I trying to just book 30 minutes to have a conversation and record it. And
Yeah.
we're like, well, we could do that. Well, no, that's not going to work because we have this. And oh, I could do that. Oh, well, that won't work for me. And you do this round and round until you're like 8 months, we can hang out. Friendship as an adult is already hard to work on and develop because, like we talked about earlier, the time your life gets busier, adult friendships really require a lot of intentionality. And I think they require sacrifice. Like, if you want to have a good friendship, you've got to make time for each other, just like your marriage. You can like busy yourself out of quality time with your spouse. But then, once your kids leave your house and you're not as busy for a short season, like, is that just a stranger that you're living with because you didn't take the time to really work on that relationship? I think it can be that way with friendships if we don't take the time to prioritize that friend and developing that friendship. And it is hard to maintain adult friendships. But yeah, so for you, Lori, like what is prioritizing those, gotta keep them around friends in your life look like in this season that you're in?
I think it looks like remembering to check in with them, what's going on with them, to kind of follow up on things that they've told you,
Mhm.
that they're struggling with, and you checking in with them and, asking how that's going, that to remember what they're going through and, when you think of them, send that text. And I think it's in the way that works for both of you getting together, when you can. And I think, like you said, I think earlier, that you're really intentionally trying to think about the friend that you want and become that friend for them.
Yeah.
So whether that's, they're going through a hard time. And so you're going to allow a little extra space for them because, they're clinging on to a thread, and you're gonna make that space for them, or, sometimes for me, like, my kids are doing this particular activity. I have this span of time where I'm waiting for them to be done, and so maybe I can get together with a friend during that that time that I can have, said I have this hour of time that I'm not being required of anything, so I can pour into somebody else.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, for me, that's what that looks like, praying for them. I've had a friend recently reach out to me that I hadn't seen since college, and but we were really best friends at that time, and she reached out to me because she's going through a struggle right now and she wants prayer. And so
Hmm.
now it's like I'm making it a point to, connect with her and see what's going on. And so I was so grateful that she thought of me to reach out to me.
Yeah.
And as that our friendship did mean something, even though I haven't seen her for years, for 20 years. Um,
That's really
so
cool.
yeah, so I don't know if that answers your question, but that's kind of like, space and time that you have and committing to invest that time in
Yeah.
somebody, you have a history with, you feel safe with, that's important to you.
Yeah, I think the point you made about just, like, even sending texts just to, like, check in and follow up on something they said, I think that goes a really long way because, I don't know, at this stage in our life, when you still got kids at home, and if your friends are also in that similar stage, then they understand how hard it is to stay connected and get together. But I think just being intentional with, like, "Hey, I was thinking about you today. How are you doing? I remember you said this last week when we saw each other, like, how's that going?" I think that goes like, that means the world to me when I have friends do that for me. I have 2 friends who that I'm closest to that they text almost every single day. We have a little friend group, and they text almost every single day. "Okay, friend check-in. How's everybody doing? How was your day?" And, you get to it when you can, and that's kind of the rule. But if nobody hears from you after 24 hours, like, everybody's on a hunt. But I think that's just really important to and if you don't have that kind of friend and you're like, "Man, I wish somebody would check up on me." Like, I would love a text of, "Hey, how are you doing? I was thinking about you." I think be that kind of friend, and you will naturally grow that in your life.
Yeah.
But I think that goes a long way because 'cause you're right, it is really hard to make time to get together, although I try to do that with a couple of my friends, like, once a month. Like, let's just try to get together on, like, a Friday night or a Sunday night or something just to stay connected, and it doesn't always happen, but we try real hard, and I think that's a worthy time to spend your time, even when, you've got kids at home and a husband and you've got things going on at work and all the things. It's really important for you to work on growing good, healthy friendships because while a friendship may not be necessary to like survive, they make surviving wonderful. They
Yeah.
make life worth living. I mean,
Yeah.
friendships, it's easy to just choose to stay isolated because maybe you've been wounded before or you've lost too many friends, through that drifting apart or whatever, but I think, we obviously we weren't designed to be so isolated. We were designed for community and relationship and deep heart to heart relationship. And so it's worth the risk and it's worth pouring yourself into and giving time to develop that. But I think for some people, it can be hard to do that because of wounds that they have. Maybe they've experienced like betrayal or in friendship, and they've just not been able to recover from that. And so there's definitely walls up. Maybe they're really friendly, but there's not a depth in friendship that they're willing to develop because they're not. I mean, I know people like that in my life now that I think I want for them to have, good, deep heart to heart connections with other women. Um, but there's a fear and a risk that feels too expensive for them. But like thinking about that in friendship, I think something that amazes me is thinking about how Jesus experienced betrayal from, one of his
Yes.
best friends. And as we record this, it's Holy Week. That you're going to get this after Easter, but right now today It's actually Spy Wednesday in Holy Week. And that's, the day where we remember the quiet betrayal of Jesus by Judas. And we pause and reflect on our own lives and how we've quietly betrayed our Lord and his extension of forgiveness, even still, and his extension of friendship toward us, even still. And, when I look at the story of Christ and the way he had to face betrayal, I think there's a lot there that we can learn about our own friendships and how to move forward through wounding and betrayal. Anyway, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think his example is something that has comforted me when I have walked through those seasons of rejection or betrayal. I think, like nothing we go through is like what he went through. But just the thought that he understands and it wounds him just like it wounded us, it's hugely comforting as we're going through those times. And knowing that it like in a way is something we have in common. Um, and and to look how he dealt with it, that he still called him friend, that
Yeah.
he still washed his feet and
Yeah.
so I think it's humbling because very often when we're wronged and we're rightly wronged, it's very easy to build up a wall and say, I don't need friends. I'm better by myself.
Yeah.
And really, we're the ones that get hurt by that.
Yeah.
So I think, just to see his example, which showed both, I'm sure that he hurt over the betrayal, but at the same time, he didn't let it change who he was. He was, I mean, he was God, of course, but still he knew who he was and that he was a good friend and that was his friend no matter what they had done.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just think it kind of reframes the things that sometimes we're going through with friends, and so um, we're all going to walk through those moments with friends.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the thing that, particularly that story about Judas selling Jesus, for 30 pieces of silver, the thing that sticks out to me is, that happened Wednesday. Thursday is the Last Supper, and Jesus didn't, stop him at the door. Jesus knew what he had done. And, Jesus still invited him in, still washed his feet, like you said, still called him his disciple. He did say, one of you is going to betray me and go and do what you know, decided to do. But there was always a way back for Judas, even if he didn't choose it. The door was left open for Judas by Jesus. And I think that is an example of extraordinary grace and a supernatural grace that goes against your nature, that only God can really produce the ability to offer that to people in you. But that's, I think, what we're called to, not to be a doormat, but to have extraordinary grace available to people who come back and say, I'm sorry, I wronged you. Or instead of projecting, well, this person did this to me and projecting that possibility on every other person that you could have a friendship with, but you now don't trust anyone because one person broke your trust. I think Christ calls us to something different than that. That's the world's way of dealing with betrayal and brokenness and friendship. And that is the fleshly way to deal with that. I think Christ calls us to something else. So if you're like somebody who's, got walls up in friendships um because of pain in the past, I want to challenge you and encourage you that one, not everyone is that old friend that you had. And two, Christ calls you to something greater and he will empower you and enable you to offer grace beyond yourself. And you're right, Lori. I think we rob ourselves when we say no to friendship out of fear. We rob ourselves of spiritual growth. So much of my spiritual growth in my life has been instigated and spurred on by friendship.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Huge amounts of that. It's not been just me and Jesus, it's been God speaking to me through friends in my life, friends challenging me to live, like I said earlier, more devoted, that, I would have been comfortable where I was if I hadn't seen that friend, living a purer life than I did. So I think it is you have to love God's plan more than you love self-preservation. And God's plan is friendship. And he modeled that by coming down and calling us his friends. And
Yes.
so I think if Christ is calling us his friends, then we can't forsake friendship. And we can't say, well, I'm only going to be friends with my husband and God because those are the only people I can trust. God did not also call you to live a suspicious life and a
Right.
life lacking the ability to give yourself to other people, even if that means opening yourself up to hurt. So I just want to challenge that way of thinking. If that's where you're at, I think I think you should talk to Jesus about that a little more and he'll help you. So I want to wrap this up with I mean, we kind of rabbit trailed, and that's fine. I like all the rabbit trails, but I want to do something a little bit fun, and I want to do a lightning round. I don't think I sent you these
Okay.
questions, but
Okay.
it's like first, first thing that enters your mind. Okay,
Okay.
and these are I know I knew this was going to stress you out, but I'm doing it anyway. These are all friendship related. Okay, what makes someone instantly likable to you, Lori?
I like people that are funny, that, are warm, that, make you feel at ease. They're humble.
Yeah,
That's what I think of usually.
yeah. I think I instantly like you if you're funny.
Mhm.
Yep, that's we're gonna get along great if you're funny. Okay, group text or one-on-one coffee?
I'm probably more one-on-one coffee kind of gal, I think.
Yes. Me too. I don't wanna be trapped in a group text,
Yeah.
which is
No,
funny
it's
because
stressing me out.
I'm famous for trapping other people in a group text, but I don't wanna be in it. Okay, voice notes or long texts? Which do you prefer?
So, I don't really do voice notes, but
Mhm.
I imagine that might be better than long text. I have done a lot of like audio text lately because I'm like, so yeah, if I could like, yeah, I would probably choose voice to notes. Although I
Okay.
don't do it a lot, but
Yeah. I had one friend who voice noted, like, every text. All she would do is send me, like, a little recording of
I
everything.
did.
And you know what? I really liked it because it felt like we were having a conversation that I could pause if I needed to without being rude to her. But then I could hear the inflections in her voice and all of that. And so I don't know, maybe I'll start voice noting people more. But then you can't like that's the
You
other
can't
the
refer to it, I guess, as easily.
yeah, or like if you're in a room like in a meeting and it pops up and you want to look at it real quick, you can't if it's voice text. So
Well, that's true. Yeah, it's a
there's
good
no
point.
privacy with a voice text. Okay.
Yeah.
What is the best thing a friend has ever done for you?
Goodness. I've got a lot to choose from. I've been blessed. Well, this recently, I had some friends that threw me a pretty sweet 50th birthday party that
Woo!
really makes me smile when I think about it. So that's what I'm going to say right now. But yeah, yeah, that was really sweet. I like just seeing the friends' faces when I walked in the room. I thought that was like the best part of the night.
Oh,
So
that's so sweet.
yeah, yeah.
That's awesome. Best thing a friend has ever done for me? I don't know. I think cuz I like you, I feel like I've had friends love me really well over the years. Oh, this one just popped into my head. Maybe it's not the best. I don't know. So if I didn't mention a thing that you did for me, I'm sorry. I love you still. I had a couple friends buy me a guitar one time. Uh, they knew mine was like old and decrepit, and they went out and they bought me a beautiful guitar. It was so nice, and it was like the nicest gift. It was
That
so
is
nice. So,
sweet. Yes.
yeah.
Oh, I love that.
Okay, what's something small that makes you feel loved by a friend?
I think that you remember what I said and you bring it up. Like I've had people that I think like we all, I mean, myself included, sometimes I have a hard time remembering things.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
Like, when other people make the effort to, like, remember it, and then when they talk to me, they're working off that memory. I just think that kinda speaks a love language to me. I'm like, "Oh, that's, really kind that you, remembered what I said to you." Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that, but in the spirit of being different, because I that's probably my number one too, is just remembering something I said or brought up. Okay, so I had this friend once, and I've started to do this because I it was just so I don't know. When we first met and we, got together one time, she's like, "Send me your coffee order. I'm gonna swing by Starbucks." And okay. Then every time I saw her after that, she would bring me a coffee, and it was always what I liked.
Aw.
And I was so impressed by that. I was like, "Oh my gosh, how do you remember what I liked from that one time I told you?" She goes, "Every time I ask somebody for their coffee order, I put it in the notes in my contacts in their phone. So if
Aw.
I'm gonna swing by and get coffee and I'm gonna see them, then I can bring them a coffee and it's one they like." So I was so impressed by that, I started doing that. So if I've ever bought you coffee, I probably have in my like my notes in my contacts what your coffee is, what your order is. So because
Aw.
that I don't know, that like meant so much to me, like, "Oh my gosh, you remembered my coffee order?" And it's fun to be able to surprise somebody with a coffee, but then if you don't know what they like, you're like, "Well, now I gotta ask," and then they're, "Oh, don't worry." It's just
Yeah.
fun. So,
Yeah, I like that.
that's a small thing. Okay, final question, wrapping up our conversation on changing seasons and friendships. We've been all over the place. We've been friendships early on in your life, when you've got kids, when seasons, pull you apart, when you go through tough things with friends, all the things. What is one thing that you've learned about friendship over the years that you think has been the most important thing you've learned?
I think, that it is gonna feel hard, and it has to be intentional.
Mhm.
It might feel awkward too, I think sometimes you think that that is gonna get better, but I think always when you're making new friendships, it's always gonna feel a little awkward, and it's always gonna, feel hard in the beginning, and I don't think you should not do it for that reason. Don't be afraid of hard. Also, I think this is, for me, what has been the most helpful thing is don't kind of hold high in your expectations that you're looking for one type of friend. Um, because in my life, I feel like that would have really held me back. Like, I really had to look around and kind of, be open to many and different types of friendships because you never know where it's going to lead and how it's going to grow.
Absolutely. That's a really good piece of advice. That's a really good piece of advice. I think for me, s- two small things. One, don't make making friends as adults complicated. I think
Mm.
we can still do it like we did when we were kids. If there's somebody you like, you can just go up to them and be like, "Hey, do you want to be friends?" And they might laugh at you and think that's kind of silly, but also it like warms things up immediately and opens the door because like usually I every time I've been like, "I think you're really great. Do you want to be friends?" They've
Who's
laughed
going
about
to say
it,
no?
and then they do wanna be friends, and then I'm like, "Okay, we're friends." So, just do
Right.
it. It's easy, okay? Don't make it so
Yeah.
complicated. Just ask, "Do you wanna be friends? Cool, we're friends now." Second second is, I think and I'm still working on this, is learn to be an active listener and try to do that more than you talk. That's hard for me
Mm.
because I like to talk. But I try to tell myself, "Hey, shut up," and listen and, like, actively listen to them, reflect back what they're saying and make sure because everybody wants to be heard, and so many people feel like their voice is not important, and I think that's something a way you can minister to your friends and love on your friends is showing them how important their voice is to you. So, be a really good listener.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. That's real good.
Okay, Lori, I loved this conversation. It
Mhm.
went all kinds of
Yeah.
directions and ways expecting, but I loved it. And I'm so glad we sat down and talked about friendship tonight. And I hope that you listening, that this has been an encouragement and a blessing to you. I hope it's challenged you to grow in your friendships and to embrace friendships. And if you're struggling with them, try again. And if if you liked this episode, we have one more in the changing series, the changing season series, and it's going to be about your calling. And so, what do you do when your calling shifts and your seasons change there? So, that's going to be a really good conversation with Alex next time on the podcast. You can subscribe to She Is His wherever you listen to your podcast, and you'll get notified when the next one comes up. And you can follow us on our social media, Pretty and Wise Co., or go to our website, prettyandwise.com, to get connected with us. We would love to see you in person at one of our events, whether that's the conferences or the retreats or our summer supper club this summer. Or we'd love to hear from you if you want to write with us. We always are inviting guests to write on our blog. We'd love for you to share your story with us. Hope that we get connected soon. But we love you guys, and we'll see you next time on the She Is His podcast.